Well, I have the fabulous luxury of inviting and having on our call today Sandra Sigman. And Sandra owns a business called Les Fleurs. And she's going to tell us all about that. And there's obviously a Paris connection or a French inspired connection because her business is all about, as I'm reading it right off the website, French inspired floral, home, and garden. And even though you have a brick and mortar, which we're going to talk about on the right up north of Boston in Andover, you also have an e-commerce site. So this is something that I think can appeal, and you have trips, can appeal to everyone no matter where you are, even if you're not actually going to Sandra's shop. So welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So
thank you
fun
for having
to have
me.
you here. And we have this French connection. Let's just dive right in because you created a shop. Now, I lived on the North Shore of Boston for, probably 4 years. And I just never really thought of it as a French hub.
No, not for sure.
So you
sure.
have to tell me where that all came from. Share with everyone.
Well, it's kind of a sweet story because I think all of us can relate to, growing up and perhaps having a parent that, was entrepreneurial. And that was my mom. And she was a floral designer. Well, she didn't call herself a floral designer, but in the beginning, she would just kind of, make bouquets from her garden, etc. And so when I was pretty young, I'm one of four. My dad actually worked for Nabisco Corporation. So he would go to all the grocery stores and he was a manager and he would just make sure all the displays, but he got to know all the owners. And he said, oh, my wife puts bouquets together. Maybe she could, come in and do some bouquets around the holidays. So my mom took it very seriously, put together some bouquets. We show up at the grocery store and they were like, we love them. We'll take 200. And my mom was like, what? 200? Yeah. So I think she was kind of like, oh. So of course, I'll never forget. It was like a Saturday. She was like, Sandra, come on, we're going to go on a trip. We're going to Boston. And I thought, okay. And I was pretty young. I was probably like 12. And we go to Boston and we went to the Boston Flower Market to go get flowers to do this, I guess, job, if you will. And I remember going, oh, wow, like this exists. Like, I guess you just never see that massive amount of cut stems in one place. And I think that was, kind of the thing that stirred within me. So fast forward, like I said, anyway, that's in like a family business. My mom would bribe all us kids to help her, and I was in charge of putting somewhat bouquets together, at age 14, they weren't very pretty. But as time went on, like I secretly, did enjoy it. Of course, I want to go hang out with my friends and not be, playing with flowers on a Saturday afternoon. And then she started doing like weddings and etc. So my dad converted a detached garage we had into a studio space for her.
Oh my God. How unbelievably supportive though he was for that era. It's really, not only this entrepreneurial mom, but a dad that supported your mom's.
Yeah, he was great. He worked after hours for us. But I think what was really wonderful is she always wanted a store, but she knew with 4 children and everything that it probably would be hard. And like you said, the times were very different. And my dad was definitely ahead of, the curve, and that dads were helping and fathers. So I think, she always wanted in her heart to have a shop. And how the French part came in is that I had the opportunity to go live in Paris for 18 months. And I know people were like, what? And so what it was I was a professional figure skater did you ever hear of Stars on Ice?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. So I skated for Holiday on Ice, which is the European version. And the headliner of our show was Katharina Witt, the German ice champion. Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. So she was the headliner and we were based in Paris and had an apartment, and I was all of like 19 living in Paris.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And I remember going to Paris and not speaking. I mean, I knew like bonjour and s'il vous plaît and merci. And I remember the show was taught in French. And I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? And tout droit is straight ahead, à droite is to the right, and à gauche is to the left. And they were saying tout droit. I was going right. I didn't know where I was going. I was so mixed up. I called my parents crying, saying they're going to fire me. And my mother said, well, this is what I think is what people will say is the inner strength you have within. And, maybe my mom could have been like, oh, it's okay, come home, or give up. But no, she was like, yep, go get yourself a French book and go apply yourself to school somewhere. And I did. I went to Alliance Française. I got a book. I studied. My roommate was from Sweden. She spoke 5 languages, and she was like translating and helping me because not really a lot of people spoke French back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of the French connection. And then the other part of this was my shows were at night. So during the day, I didn't have a lot to do. So I was kind of like, I'd go to museums, I'd walk around, and, there's only so many museums you could go see. And finally, I started ducking into flower shops. I think it was familiar to me. It kind of brought me, I was a little homesick, being 19, away that far away. Yeah. And I think it did help soothe my soul a little bit. And I would, go to this one particular flower shop, and it was right near my apartment. I lived near the Opera, which is Rue Saint-Lazare. Place de Gare, which is the train station. And there was a little cute flower shop, and you walked in, and all the girls that worked there had black aprons on, and they were just, very small flower shops, but they would be holding these bouquets in their hands. And I would be like, wow. And I remember calling my mother every Sunday evening and saying, Mom, they actually have the flowers out. They don't keep them in the coolers.
It's incredible. Even today, obviously you're kind of raising the bar of what flower shops are all about in America. But even today, it's astounding, I think, for people when they come to Paris and see there's a flower shop like there are boulangeries. They're everywhere, and the flowers are outside. And you can touch them and smell them. Yeah,
touch them. And there's not like pre-made bouquets on the back in the cooler that look at like, I don't know, that's really no effort was put in, just like, let's make it quick. And so I remember calling my mom saying, the flowers are spilling out to the streets. It's amazing in the way they put things together. And Mom, on Saturdays, they go to the boulangerie, they go to the patisserie, and then they come to the fleuriste. And there's a conversation, and there's like some thought behind it. And I also said to my mom, it's amazing. Like, you can't get strawberries in December in Paris, and you can't get peonies in December in Paris. So I loved that there was a seasonality to it as well, that they actually said, this is in season. This is what should be offered. And I loved that. And I loved that there was conversations, and that the head designer would say, what kind of vase do you have? What kind of, intimate gathering are you having? And I just thought, wow, I like this. I like this. This is very different. This feels very different than what we do back in the States. Mm-hmm. Now, again, this was, many moons ago, but it kind of, I don't know, brewed inside me. And I also, not to have a sad note, but my mom had breast cancer, and it broke my heart to, see her sad sometimes. And I was away. And so I would try to cheer her up with all this French kind of flower talk, kind of brought me closer to her. So that's how everything brewed in my head, I guess. And
were you thinking, though, at that time, I'm going to bring this back home? Because you were pretty young. We're already in that kind of entrepreneurial mindset. I'm not going to skate forever. So what am I going to do when I go back?
Yes, I think after 18 months, like it was hard, being away that far away from home. And also, we were skating a lot of shows, and that's really hard on your body year after year. And I've been skating since I was a kid and competitive skater. So I think my body, and, I'm all of like 21 now, right. But I could, getting up in the morning was like, ouch, and I think I was slowly saying to myself, like, I don't picture myself doing this for another, 10 years. So I definitely started planting the seed, and I'd say, Mom, we have to open a French flower shop. And she'd be like, okay. And like you just said, in back in Massachusetts, where most flower shops were very traditional, very, laid out a certain way, and I was bringing in a whole new concept. And I said to her, we have to call it Les Fleurs because that's the name of the flower shop that I intern at. And she kept saying, okay, so let me get this straight, Sandra. We're going to open a French concept flower shop that no one's going to understand. Number two, we're going to name it that no one's going to be able to pronounce it or spell it. Right. And I was like, yes.
I love this.
I was like, yes.
Yeah, but she went with it.
Yeah, I moved home.
Okay.
And just started, with my mom brainstorming, and we, and it's so cute because way back when, artwork, like you're like, oh, I need a logo. I need, and I remember going to a graphic designer and we went to her like office and she handed us a book. Wow. Of artwork. It wasn't even anything PDF. It was nothing like that. It was like basically a book.
Right.
And we picked out this flower design and said, oh, this is pretty. And like, really, talk about winging it. We had no idea what we were doing. But I think my mom was ready to do a flower shop and I was going to be like her sidekick. Mm-hmm. And so we decided, I went back to school as well. I went back to Boston University because I had to take 2 years off, of course, to skate. And when I moved back to Boston, it was hard because there was not a lot of retail locations in Boston. There was one main strip, which is called Newbury Street, which is the busiest part of Boston at the time. Of course, there's a lot more locations now. And, we weren't going to be able to afford that rent. So we knew I would be... this area would support it because it was outside of Boston and we thought, close enough. And there was also a lot of wedding venues around here. So we thought it would be a good concept. And we found this cute little shop, teeny, and we hung out our little Les Fleurs sign. And that was many moons ago, like I said. And what the sad part is, I was 23. We opened in January and my mother died suddenly in February.
Oh my God. Wow.
It was really hard.
Oh, I'm so
crushing.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I always, and this, I don't want to get teary-eyed, but I think this 30 years that I've owned the shop, like my mom's really watched over me. So I feel like she has been with me along this journey. And that at age 23, I was afraid. I was, devastated beyond. I had a flower shop now that I didn't really know how to run. I had no business savvy. I had no idea what I was doing. I remember my father said, well, he had just retired. So he was like, well, I can help you. And I said, yeah, but Dad, you don't know how to design.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, well, I can drive the trucks for you. And I was like, okay, and this is where, at 23, I thought, my girlfriends were so sweet to me. They were like, what have you got to lose? You signed a lease for a year. Just give it a try, Sandra. You're so talented. And I was like, and I didn't believe in myself. I was like, no, I can't do it. But I think that's when you muster the strength that maybe you don't think you have. Yeah. And I wanted to make my mom proud. I didn't want her to think like I just went, and cried and stayed in my bed like I wanted to. Right. And I just got up and showed up every day.
Yeah.
And just, tried to make it work. So. Well,
and what a beautiful tribute to your mom. I mean, she got to experience a shop, which was something she always wanted. And, as sad as it was, thank heavens you came back when you did. And you said, Mom, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. But that brings up a really important point, though, as to kind of a characteristic or a quality that you must have as an entrepreneur. You've run that shop and it started doing, I'm assuming, floral design strictly?
Oh, strictly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's then, about all I could, handle at that point.
And I mean, you were a kid, you were 23 years old. Most of us are just, I don't know, doing not much, trust me. At 23, whether it's my own kids or myself. Right. But, go back to that characteristic, that quality of just, working it. And how did the shop then evolve? Like, how did you, besides getting up and going to work every day, when did you start to think, I want to add something? Because I see now you do workshops, you do... Mm-hmm. trips to France, which we have to talk about. You do, you have a shop, an e-commerce shop. You do, wedding venues are very different from doing an arrangement for somebody like me who's just doing a dinner party or just wants beautiful flowers in my apartment.
Right, right. Well, a couple things. At age 23, you're right. But I also knew early on, which, maybe it was my mom's spirit through me, is that I knew how to market the business. And there was no Instagram, there's no Facebook, there was nothing. There's no websites, nothing.
Yeah.
So my business cards were being printed up. I heard through a friend who was a photographer said, I'm going to be doing a bridal show. And I said, what's a bridal show? I had no idea what a bridal show was. He says, well, you kind of, show up and there's a booth and you set up your wares and you pass out business cards and you talk to people. And I thought, well, I can do that. That can't be that hard. So I remember it was in Boston at one of the larger hotels. And I called and I said, is there any spots? They said, and it's so funny. Like, I don't want to say how the universe works, but there was someone that canceled and they said, if you want it, you can have it. And I said, great. Like, when do I have to be there? And they're like, in 2 weeks. I was like, great. So I said to my father, so I made the bouquets just like my mom had taught me and just like I learned in France. And I had my business cards and I had a little sign made and I showed up and I wore my cute little French outfit. And I thought, I'm just going to see what I can do and meet people. And it was a 2-day event and I booked 38 weddings.
Oh, my Lord.
And I went back going, whoa. Oh, but I think I was so enthusiastic. I was so excited to have, a way to show. And I was so excited about the story. And I think every bride felt bad for me or just was like, and I think I just had this enthusiasm. I was just like, I got to do this. I have to make this work. My mom would be so sad. And, my dad and all my girlfriends who were like, I will come and help you. And they did. They showed up. They cleaned buckets. They did anything I asked them. They were so amazing. And that's what I want to say, that I didn't do this alone. I just had such amazing people behind me. And I just kept saying, well, if this doesn't work, okay, then I can go get another job or I can go do something else. But I was like, let's at least try.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of started. And in the first couple of years, I was just treading water. I was just like, all right. And then as I got like a little bit more, experience under my belt, people would call me and say, you did my wedding. Well, now I'm having a baby. Can you do my christening, my shower, etc. Yeah. And then I started getting requests for other things. And I was starting my own family at this point too. I got married and I started having my own children. So I think it was good for that time being. As to how French in France came back into the picture.
Yeah.
I remember going to like trade shows and seeing like the containers they were using and, and bubble bowls and fish bowls and, cylinders, and not that anything's wrong with them. But I remember being in the flower shops in Paris going, well, where are those, cool baskets I saw? And I want to display things in my store a little bit, nicer than just, again, what we all were using. And I started getting an itch to go back to France, and I kept saying, I know I can't live there, but my dream's always been to go back. Right. And then I just started going on trips. And at first, would stuff my suitcase with as much as I could possibly fit. And then, ventured into small containers and shared containers. And then again, I guess I just did everything in very baby steps.
Yeah.
But I was brave enough to try.
Yes, that courage, bravery, I think is commendable. And we actually all need it, whether we're 23 starting a business, 25, 30 as you were growing up in the business, so to speak. But also, as we get to 50 and beyond, you have to embrace the positivity. What if it doesn't work, I'll do something else. I just love that. And I can do this. Why not? Why not? Don't even think about what could. Sometimes though, I do this myself. We get kind of stuck in what could go wrong and what is the plan B and, oh my God. And when then we find out we spend more time on plan B than we do on what it is we really want to do. So obviously your husband was very supportive of this whole French connection.
Oh, I think he was so sick of me talking about it. Like French. Yes. And for sure. But, you said something in one of your podcasts that I listened to, and I thought it was really poignant. As you said, sometimes you have to jump, hold your nose and jump.
My grandmother used to say that because we'd go.
Yeah.
I grew up in Minnesota where there are lakes, and you'd always stand at the end of the dock, and you'd have to jump in, and you didn't know really what was going to be down there. She used to say, well, you're in Massachusetts, so you know what I mean.
Yes.
She'd just say, honey, just plug your nose and jump.
It's true. No, it's true. Yeah. And please, I don't want everyone to think like everything just fell into place for me. Oh my gosh, there were so many catastrophes and things that I was like, oh, that didn't go well. And, and that's hard. When you get knocked down, it is really hard to get back up. And, and things are going to happen in your life, in business and family life, everything. And it was really hard at times. And there was times that I wanted to give up and just say, this is just way too hard. But I think what kept me going is my passion for all this. I generally love to play with flowers, and I love flowers around me, and I love to look at them. I love to go pick them. And I still do most of all the buying for the store. And the girls are saying, and I said, no, that's my joy. Like, I love that. And I love growing things in my garden, and I bring them in and I say, I just grew these peonies. I just grew these tulips. And they're like, that's amazing that you still want to be that involved with flowers and jump out of bed. And I say this to all my children, that make sure whatever you pick, you love it. Yeah. Because it's going to get hard, and you're going to be like, this is hard to get up in the morning and go to work. But if you love it and you have a lot of passion behind it, and you generally really feel like you're bringing something, like, you bring a bouquet to a bride and she has tears in her eyes that you've now been a part of her big day. Like, there's no other feeling for me anyways. There's no other feeling. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Well, so it's not only this, I'm hearing it's not only this love of flowers and even design, which flowers are one thing. Some people just love the dirt and flowers, and others can go from the dirt into the actual designs themselves, but also the relationship that you have with your clients. I mean, the fact that you start with weddings and end up doing christenings and all kinds of other things, I'm sure. Either big occasions in a person's life says the relationship matters to you too. Yeah. So talk a little bit though about the challenges, because you started with something small and now it's gotten rather big, and there's online now. I mean, the industry changed, I'm assuming, with the the rise of the internet. You're now doing online workshops, I saw on your website, whatnot. So talk about kind of how you navigated those challenges and what those challenges were. Maybe I should go backwards. What those challenges were and how you dealt with it, because so much is going on up here, in our heads. Yeah.
I think when I was doing the weddings for years, and I enjoyed it immensely, but it's all weekends. It's also, you can't say to the bride, oh, I'm so sorry that this, didn't come in or whatever, and I'll make it up to you next week. There are no next weeks. And I just remember, it was starting to wear on me, my nerves. I would just be up at night worrying that, white, Playa Blanca roses weren't going to be as white as they should be. I think the wedding industry was changing, and there was just, ceiling installations and craziness, and it was fun, but it's a lot of backbreaking work. Anybody that does weddings nonstop, it's a lot of lifting, a lot of travel, and it was starting to wear on me. And it's all weekends. And as much as all my family and friends would be like, 4th of July weekend, we're going to go have a cookout and do this. And I'd be like, I have 3 weddings, because everyone thinks it's great to get married on holiday weekends, like Labor Day, Memorial Day, Father's Day, Mother's Day. Everybody thinks it's a great time to get family together and have a wedding. So of course that means I was missing my children's events. And I just said, I have to make some changes. I knew in my heart that I could still do weddings, but I had to now figure out other income revenue, that I have to other streams of income. So I started noticing a lot of my clientele would come in and just be like, where'd you get that basket and where'd you get this? So I started kind of bringing in more product. And then a lot of people would say, wow, I'm watching you, because again, we were like the French flower shops. We did everything out in the open. Our back room was really all very open. You could watch us, which I love. It's like being in a restaurant. You can see the chef cooking. Like, yes. I love that concept. So we were designing. So people were like, can you teach me that? And I thought, oh, sure. So we started doing workshops, word of mouth. And the first couple of workshops were mostly my girlfriends because, it started off slowly, but then it got more. And I love teaching because I feel like my mom taught me. Okay. And I thought I could give back and teach some of the things that I learned. And I loved that as much too. And then the trend started. I noticed everybody, including my children, were on devices, their computers, their phones. And I thought, oh, we should. And people started asking, mostly men, can I just order Valentine's flowers online? And I'd say, oh, so I really listened to my customers and I thought, oh, I think I better start an online. So yet again, figured that out as well, just like I did the bridal show and creating websites way back when, and e-commerce was much harder than it is now. There's some really amazing tools out there now. Okay. That wasn't available, but is now. So we adapted. We're on Squarespace right now. It's wonderful. We do a lot of it in-house. I have some amazing people that work here that are just, much more tech savvy than me. Yeah. I say, oh, that looks pretty and that needs to go here, and I'll do the design concept. But that, I think, more than anything, is huge now. People are on their computers or on a device. Yeah. I marvel at when I'm at airports and everybody's got their, right? Yeah. Everyone's heads down.
Oh, it is. It was, I'll break in totally off the subject, but I was on a train not that long ago and it was in Europe, obviously. And you looked in the whole car of the train, not one head was up. Every single head was down. And it didn't matter if there were 75 or 15. It's like, I don't know where we're going with all this, but that's a whole different conversation. But when you say you started with the e-commerce, so it was ordering, the Valentine's bouquet, say as an example, for my wife, and then when did you start selling things? Because now I see China and special souvenirs and baskets and fabric and vases and all of this that looks like it came from someplace else, not America.
Yes. So the first thing is we started off pretty simple with just flowers. Okay. And why we did that is because that was really the heart of our business. So we knew that people would want to order online. So we started with that first. And, maybe we started with 6 arrangements and then added to it. And we always kind of color coordinated it because some people, want lighter pastels and somewhat more bright and cherry. So we started with that and saw in baby steps and figured out how that worked. And then we noticed, again, we were bringing a lot of items over from France, and we thought, okay, well, let's again start a smaller collection. So we really tried to start, keeping it tight and simple. I guess you can see the storyline is that I don't like to overextend myself and put myself, I like baby steps. So we started doing that. And then what we did is during the pandemic, when everything just kind of shut down, we knew we really had to ramp up and do that as well.
Did more, when you say ramp up, then you did more. Hold on. I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. But that's the beauty of working, from home or with family, is that people are in and out being an entrepreneur. But when you say ramp up, is that when you started the online classes as well as the items to sell, or what did you do during COVID?
Oh, it's such a great story. So during COVID, all of us went lockdown. All the kids came home from college. There's people everywhere. My husband is a surgeon. He even came home too. I mean, it was just like crazy. So of course, mom was like, okay, everyone's on computers. I wasn't allowed to make a noise. So I just said, I'm going to the flower shop. So, it was interesting. A lot of my friends, in multiple industries were all like, oh my goodness, like what's going to happen? And, again, that just like that part of my soul, I was like, COVID is not taking me down. This is not how Les Fleurs ends. This is just not my end story. This is back the movie up. This is not how it's going down. So I got a call from a beautiful estate near here called the Stevens Coolidge Estate. Mm-hmm. And they got wind that I was making flower bouquets and kind of donating them to community care centers. And because my husband's a doctor, I thought we would send flowers to the healthcare workers as well. They got wind of it and they called me and they said, we just planted, I think, 60,000 tulips. And nobody was going to see it. It was supposed to be this visual tour where people bought tickets and walked the grounds of this gorgeous gardens. But of course, with COVID, so she called me and she says, you have a good social media following and you also are a flower shop. Would you be willing to come and shoot here and maybe promote it? And we could do like a virtual tour. And I said, yes, of course. So we did that. And then they had 30,000 tulips. So we started making bouquets with them and sending them off so that kept me quite busy. And I just thought, this is not about me right now. This is not about me worrying about if my website is going to be, front and center. What's important right now is that, we're all in this together and that you feel appreciated. So we started doing a lot of that. And then we started doing a lot of like Instagram lives and videos with folks that kind of had such unique stories. And I loved that, I was just basically randomly messaging some people on Instagram saying, I love your products. And one of them, Studio Carta, Angela, I've always followed her. She brings in all handmade ribbon from Italy. And I thought, let's do it. Why don't you do a studio tour? And so we started doing this. Another brand reached out to me, Vivi Margot, Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Yes. She reached out to me and she's like, you're donating flowers. Can we do? So we did a live with that. And then my other friend, Sharon Santoni, who we will get to tours and why I do them with her. Her and I did flower arranging. She was in Normandy, France. I was here in Andover, and we kind of went in our gardens and picked whatever was kind of blooming, and we did arrangements and people could like chime in. And it was just such a feel good because I think all of us needed that. So.
Yes. You're right.
What I did during COVID.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story though, because you brought in positivity in that time period when it was so easy to be negative, so easy to think, oh, what is, kind of the end of the world mindset. But you said something about how you don't like to, what did you say, extend yourself or go too fast or something. What was it? Remind me again. And you kind of phrased it like it was almost a weakness. And actually, I want you to talk about it as a strength.
Oh, no. I think early on when I was doing a lot of weddings, you get a little ahead of yourself, like, sure, I can do 4 weddings in a weekend. And then you're in the middle of it and you're there till 1:00 in the morning and you're like, whoa, I completely overextended myself. And, you hear the term, everything takes twice as much time and costs twice as much. Yeah. So I started saying, okay, I didn't buy correctly and this wedding is now overextending me and my staff, and my children are wondering when I'm coming home for dinner. So I decided not a good concept. So I think I just would put more thought and really understand how long things take and how much they will end up costing. So I think I used it as a strength because I think, especially as women, right? We're all raising our hands. Sure, we'll help. Yes, you'll do it. And we do that. And then afterwards, we're like, why did we do that? Like, why did we say yes to 5,000 things? So I think we all can kind of relate to that. I mean, I know I can. And saying yes is so easy. But someone once said to me, actually, no is a full sentence.
Oh, wow. That's profound. Yeah, that's a takeaway here. Yeah, no is a full sentence. Yeah. Wow. A complete sentence.
A complete sentence. So I thought, So I think that's what I probably mean. Just that, I knew that my enthusiasm could run away with me.
Yeah, that's great advice, because part of this podcast is about lessons that you've learned over time that you could share with other women who are starting their businesses and are maybe where you were 10, 15 years ago. So that's wonderful advice. I've met Charlotte with Vivian Margot.
Oh, she's lovely.
I've never met Sharon, but I am my French country
Home.
home
Yes.
subscriber. So I get her beautiful magazines on a regular basis. So how did you meet these ladies? Like, because this is a big Frenchy connection.
Yeah. So I met Sharon, years and years ago. So pre-COVID, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So I was over in Paris going to a famous flea market called Chateau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes.
And I was there and of course, Instagramming a story and say no. And one of my friends who I hadn't talked to in 20 years, who lives in Florida, is sending me messages on Instagram going, Sandra, you're in Paris? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, I'm here too. And I thought, great. Oh, wonderful. I'd love to have coffee with you. And she goes, well, are you at some antique fair? And I said, yes. She goes, well, I am too. And I was like, what? We were 30 feet away from each other.
Oh my God. Oh.
So my next question was, why are you're a lawyer? Like, what are you doing at an antique fair? She goes, I'm here with Sharon Santoni. And I said, you know Sharon Santoni? Like, what? Yeah, it was and of course I knew her. Of course I followed her because being a Francophile, I was like, oh my God, I adored her. And she goes, do you want to meet her? And I was like, yes, please. So we met and we exchanged business cards and we, totally said, would love to keep in touch. And this is something that I think women, we don't do. And this is what I've learned to do, is to do the whole plug your nose and jump. So a whole month goes by and I'm like, oh, I really want to email her. And I was too nervous. And I thought, she's not going to remember me. She's going to be like, what is this, American, Right. And I said, no, I got it. So I wrote the email like 5 different ways. And then finally it's like press push, right? Like press return, publish. And I just said, again, what do I have to lose? She can say no. So I just reached out to her and just said, how lovely it was to meet her and that, would love to do like a professional buying trip with her because in France, and I don't want to put down the French because I don't want to do that. But I think when I was going to the antique fairs, a lot of the vendors I would meet say, this is just a small portion of what I have. I actually have a barn filled with more antiques. And I'd say, oh, really? I'll come over. And they were like, whoa, who are you? Which is probably, yeah. But I was like, Americans will let strangers into our homes. In France, it's a little bit more reserved. And
yes.
So I thought if Sharon had some connections and she could maybe, because I'm now filling containers and I need to find antiques to fill it. So she got right back to me, like literally within the hour and was like, of course I remember you. And absolutely. And she said, come over. And I said, okay. And I just booked a trip and I flew over and we spent like 10 days together. And we laughed. We had so much fun together. And we thought, this is just so great. And I used to say to her, all my customers who are following me now want to sneak away in my suitcase and come with me. And she's like, well, I do these kind of tours, but why don't we try doing one together? And I thought, okay. She goes, do you think 12 women, 12 women would go with you? And I said, maybe, I don't know. And I said, okay. I said, well, what am I going to tell them we're doing? She goes, well, we're going to go to gardens. We're going to go to, chateaus. We're going to go antiquing. We're going to do flower arranging. And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. And we're going to do it all in France. And I was like, right. And I sold the trip out in 2 weeks. Everybody was like, yes, please. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And we just started doing them. And we, again, had so much fun. And what I took away from these trips was quite remarkable is most women came by themselves and traveled, and just said, this is a me trip. This is a trip doing all the things that my sons don't want to do, or my children or my husband, but I want to do it. And I'm doing this trip for me, and showed up. And I thought, I love this. And I love that these women show up for themselves. And it was just more than just a trip. These women just inspired me, to hearing their stories and how they always love France and always love to do everything we just talked about. And, we're so honored that they, chose to come with us. So now we just did a tour, and I got back 2 weeks ago from Provence.
Goodness. Oh,
Yeah.
look, I looked on your site that took me to Sharon's site, and I saw Provence just ended. So you must have just got home.
Yeah, I just got home.
Yeah.
It was
Fabulous
amazing.
trip. So what is it about France? What is it? And it seems to, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but it seems to do something for women, or it has an attraction to women that I hear from some men, but not all men. There's a consistency with women. What is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, Sharon just came to our shop in November, and we did a fundraiser where we called it Women Supporting Women. And we sold tickets. I think we sold over 100 tickets. And we decided that if we were going to do this event, we had no idea what we were doing, but if we were going to do it, she was coming to speak at a garden club. And we said, if we're going to do it, we're going to make some money for this charity. So we sold it, and we raised almost $20,000.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
And
so
we
what
sat on a
charity? Give us a little.
It's called Uncommon Threads, and it's basically they started a little shop where clothes that are donated and and funds that are donated help women get back in the workforce. They've either been abused or battered and don't have a lot of self-esteem and need help with just getting back into, jobs, whatever. And some of them leave in the middle of the night with the shirts on their backs. So it's a really great organization. And I just called the director and just said, my friend's coming. We're thinking of doing this event. It's going to be all about French. We're going to have raffles, and we really would love all the monies to go to you, because it's a woman supporting women. And I think it's important. So we did this fundraiser, and we sat up, I call it Oprah style. We sat up on stage and we both answered questions. And one of the first questions was the question you just asked. And what was the big draw to France? And I think maybe because you have a home in Paris, I think when you first arrive, you're kind of like, wow, it is just quite the architecture, the how you feel, the energy. It's just really, truly one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I know when I first came there, and just the culture and the art and the history. And then you layer that with fashion, you layer that with food, you layer that with flowers, you layer that with art. And it's just, wow.
Yeah.
It's just the combination of everything they do. And then it's just truly a beautiful country. Mm-hmm. And I just fell in love. I just thought, this is amazing. And I think that's the resonating, factor that I hear again and again, that you walk away going, it's just every corner you turn, you're like, wow.
Wow. Yes, exactly.
I'm sure you still marvel at that when you're there too.
I absolutely do. But one of the questions I have for you is, as you come back, because now you've been back, a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, do you carry it with you? And do you lose it so that you need to go back to regain that feeling?
I do.
Okay.
So my family and my staff will tell you, when I come back, I'm on a cloud. I'm so excited. I'm so inspired. I see all this beauty around me, and I come back and I'm just so much more, grounded or peaceful. And it just brings, if, someone asked me about, is beauty important or is the arts important? And because sometimes you say, well, I just make this, little embroidered heart sachet. It's not that important. And I always stop them and say, no, it is important, because how many sunsets have we seen, or how many songs have been written, or artwork that has stopped us in our tracks and filled our hearts? And, maybe it's flowers for someone, or garden. So I think France kind of does that very well. Mm-hmm. Where in the States, there's definitely beauty, of course, but there's sometimes a little bit more quickness to it here. Everybody's like, oh, grab a cup of coffee. Where you go in France and you sit at Café de Fleur and you see, wow, and how they present it and the hot chocolate and they're pouring it. And it's just, it's an experience. And it's, for me, it's part of beauty and how we present things. And I think there's a story behind it. And I think, you know, it's important.
And that's part of Les Fleurs, right? Do you want women and men to have that experience when they walk in your shop?
Yeah, that's probably brings me the most joy, is that, especially during the pandemic afterwards, that people have walked in and said, I was having such a hard day, or I was having a moment, and this just has brought me so much joy. That means more to me than someone buying a trinket. If I can make someone happy and they come back and they smile and they said, you know, I was just having the worst day. I just had a fight with so-and-so. And they're just like, this feeds my soul, or, you know, or I've been stressed out. Like, I just love that. I'm so thankful that I have my store for that reason.
Yeah.
But there are times, trust me, last week we just had Mother's Day and I was like, it was
crazy.
You know, it was, and you know, it's hard. And I don't want people to think like everything's hearts and flowers and roses here. Is that, you know, last week was hard. We are small a team and we're mighty, but there's only so much we can do and capacity. And I can't tell how many folks are walking in going, well, look, all the flowers back there. And I said, yeah, those are the people that ordered them 2 weeks ago. And I can't sell you those flowers. I mean, I'd be able to get more pretty blooms right now. And, you know, and you see a lot of upset people, and, you know, and as a team, we really try to think like hard, like, okay, how can we not disappoint them? So we came up, instead of a flower bar, a flower section, we came up with like a gift bar. Where people could get maybe really pretty plants, or a box with a French candle and a little, you know, so there's struggles, trust me. It's not always people walking in going, oh, it's so beautiful. And it does happen a lot. But yeah, there's definitely times when, like last week, we were like, okay, we're at capacity. We're done.
Yeah, but also, I love your creativity. Is, you know, I can't do anything about the flower side, but how can I fill that need that the client has that walks in that didn't order? It's the day of Mother's Day, or it's the day before Mother's Day. What can we do to make them leave and still feel good? And that's very client focused, which is actually very French.
French, yes. I love in France when they give you the package and they walk you to the door.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I always tell my team that.
They also spend so much time putting the package together.
Yes.
It's like, you know, I don't know what movie it was, but there was a man that was doing the package. I can't remember it. It was like taking forever. And that's what it's like in almost every shop. Yeah. The stickers, the tissue paper, whatever.
Oh,
even the flower shops. You know,
I know sometimes people try to like move us along faster. And I was like, wait a minute, we're creating beauty videos. They're like, hurry up.
This is America. Hurry up.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about your staff, though, because obviously in the beginning it was you. And so you had to start to add people to help you with the things that, you know, you needed more help, but also were areas that you were talking about the internet and the website, you know, you can make the design decisions, but you don't want to do the back end. You just back of the house, so to speak, I call it.
Yeah. I think one of the best lessons I've learned is, in the beginning, you wear all hats and you have to do everything. You can't afford to hire staff. And for anybody starting out, I feel your pain. It's hard. And there's times when you're not your expertise and you just got to figure out, because you can't afford. But as time went on and I could start affording, you know, to have an employee here and there, it's just so helpful. It just gives you like a breather, you know, that, you know, someone's kind of got your back. And it's interesting. A lot of people say, well, how do you hire? And I don't necessarily hire someone that has like this killer resume. I can always teach things. I can teach, but I can't teach attitude. And I can't teach passion, and I can't teach enthusiasm. So I ask a lot of questions about, like, do you bring flowers home? Do you like flowers? Because if someone comes in and there's a dirty bucket and they're like, oh, you know, they don't want to touch it, then that's probably not a good fit. And they could have the amazing resume. So I really try to hire people that love flowers, that it's in their blood. You know what I'm saying? That they just wouldn't want to be anywhere else but surrounded by flowers, because there's a lot of flowers here. It's a lot of flowers. And to come back after a huge weekend like we just had for Mother's Day, and Tuesday, they're all bouncing in their shoes and they're ready to go again. I'm like, that's just astounding to me. I know I have to because I'm the owner and I have to, it's my passion, but they're not required. And they're just amazing, amazing spirits. And also hire your weaknesses. If you know you're just not good at something, then hire someone. It really, figure out a way that you can afford that. Like if you know you're just not good at like the IT stuff or et cetera, then you hire someone for sure. I learned that lesson early on, for sure.
Yeah, that's so wise, absolutely so wise. And often we think we are saving money by trying to learn how to do things ourselves that we're never going to be really great at. They're just not, we might be competent, but not really good at it. And it ends up costing us more time because we lose the time that we could spend on the things that we are good at, which are the client facing or the whatever it is that you're selling and to whomever you're selling. Having that particular space. Going back to France, though, and because there's this connection, and hopefully people aren't tired of me talking about France, but there's this connection not only with the name of your company, but also how your customer service, the way you view the things in your shop, the way people are treated when they come into your shop, all of that. Did you just over time, reconnect? Now, you said before, we had a little conversation before I hit record, and you now have an apartment that you just bought in Paris. So how do you see this all? How are you going to do all this? The connection with France and, how is this going to progress?
Well, I am in my 50s now and, I've been doing this for quite a bit and I still love it. But I also know I'm starting to also say, I think the pandemic more than anything made me stop and realize like, it can't just be all work and no play. Like there's got to be some yin and yang to all of this. And I noticed I was very lopsided, just working all the time and then I noticed how great I felt when I was in France and my husband and I would go for long weekends. And of course, any chance I could get or excuse to go to France, I was always looking for it. I'd be like, oh, there's Chateau, I have to go over. Oh, there's Maison Objet, which is a big production good show. I have to go. Oh, it's Bastille Day. I have to go. So I was always looking for excuses to go. And, and I swore when I left Paris at age 21 that I would be back. I didn't know when. I didn't know if I could ever afford it or anything, but I talked about it for 25, 30 years. And my husband, I used to talk to him all the time about it. And I said, you could put me out in the fields anywhere in France and I'd be happy. I'd be in a tent. And he'd be like, okay, but I won't. And he's like, I don't speak French. I don't want to be taking care of more property. We already have a house. And and he was just like, I also want a quick flight, direct flight. We get off and we're there. We're not, much as I love Provence, it's a little bit of trains, planes and automobiles, a little harder to get to. So he was like, Paris works. And he's like, and that's your story. That's where you lived. And I was like, no. I just didn't know if we could ever afford it. I just didn't know. And in January, my husband was probably in a good mood. And he said, let's go to France. Let's go look. He's like, what's the harm? We've just been through a pandemic. It's taught all of us like life is way too short. And I was like, like a little kid, like, really? Okay. And we had talked to a real estate agent in Paris. And I can give the name to everybody who wants him. He's wonderful. He's American, but he lives in Paris. And we probably got in touch with him like a year before the pandemic. And of course, then the world shut down. And I just put it off to the side thinking, well, that's just not going to happen. So he actually reached out to us and he said in January, if you guys are looking still, this is a really good time to come over because like people are just not coming back to the cities just yet. You might, you never know. So this is the funny story. So I said, that's when my husband's like, let's go. And so I said to him, this is sort of where I like to be. Da, da, da. He's like, so let me get this straight. This is a real estate agent. He's like, you only want to be in one arrondissement. I was like, yes, the 6th. And he's like, he goes, Cassandra, I know you know Paris pretty well. And I said, yes, I just like to be in the 6th in the left bank near Saint-Germain-des-Prés. And he said, so let me get this straight. You only want to be in one arrondissement. And I said, yes. And he said, and actually I said, there's this one street I really love. Well, kind of 2 streets, but kind of one street I really, really like. And he said, okay, again, one street and one little arrondissement. I said, one neighborhood. I said, yes. He said, would you entertain another neighborhood? I said, yes, the 7th, which is next to the 6th. And he says, great. So we fly in on a Friday. We look at 6 or 7 apartments, most of them in the 7th.
Okay.
And we had a few prerequisites. One is location. The second is we didn't want it to be a gut job. Like we didn't want to have, renovations. We're just too far away. And, the third was, of course, price range and size. Mm-hmm. So we fit that criteria. We went and looked at all 7 apartments. And my heart was kind of sad because there was, this or that. And I was just like, I was a little sad. Mm-hmm. So it was fine. And we were at dinner and I'm hearing from so many folks that it took them years to find their apartments. And I was like, okay, it's all right. So, we go out for dinner. The next morning, my husband nudges me in the hotel room and says, what about this one? This is in this 6th area you like, the 6th arrondissement. And I said, where did you find that? And he said, I don't know, online. And I said, you're kidding me. So we sent it immediately to our real estate agent. And he said, that just went on the market. And we were like, oh, God. So we said, can we go see it? And our real estate agent said, no, there's nobody in Paris that's going to show you an apartment on a Saturday, on a weekend. And of course I say, well, could you try? And he said, okay, yeah, could you try? So he sends it to the listing agent and she gets right back to him. And she said, oh, I love Americans. I went to school in the States. I went to college there. I would love to show them the apartment. She said, can they do it right now? Because I have to babysit my French grandchildren. So I loved her already because I was like so sweet. Yeah. So I'm throwing on clothes. My husband and I were just like rushing. We jump in a taxi. We rush over. I'm not paying attention to where we're going. And literally we drive up. It's the street.
Oh my gosh. This is incredible.
I literally have goosebumps. And I looked at my husband and I go, and he goes, it's the street. And so then my husband's like, oh, we're done. Like, and of course,
checkbook out. Here we go.
Well, the other thing too, is I said to the real estate agent way back before we even flew over, I said, also, I like a lot of natural light. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to have some windows. Like it's got to be, I don't want to be like I'm in a closet. So of course we we get up to the apartment. It's 8 huge windows. We're on a corner unit and I'm looking at my husband, I'm bouncing up and down and my husband's like poker face. I was like, I couldn't even. So and she said to us that there was 5 people coming to see it on Monday. And of course I gave my husband the puppy dog eyes, like, I'll do it. And he was really sweet. He says to me, okay, on one condition, honey, when you're not here working or here, you better tell all your friends and all your flower shop gals that you need to rent it. I said, I promise I will. So so we're going to rent it when I'm not there. So yes. So we're so excited. We're going over next Friday to close and get our key and buy a bed. And we're so excited.
Yes. So for everyone that, first of all, the story is incredible. The fact that you had the street in your head, which is a fabulous street, by the way. I love that neighborhood. And we both love the cafe that's down below. So we're on the street, which is fantastic. But the whole process of buying in France, because there's a lot of people who ask that question, is different. It's very different than America, and truly, your poker face doesn't even have to. It doesn't even. No, it's not relevant in France. No. So it doesn't matter if you're jumping around with joy or you look like you hate the place. But they have their process. So when did you sign the promesse?
We started everything that probably end of January, and we're finally. We don't even have the close date. We have a tentative date. And the reason why, and this is something I think I had no idea, again, the paperwork goes on for days. Yeah. One thing I found, which I thought was really interesting, is we had to hire a notaire, which is the equivalent to like an American lawyer. And one of the things that we had to do is my legal name in France is the name that's on my birth certificate, which is my maiden name. My passport is my legal name in the United States, which is my married name. Those don't match up.
Right.
So unfortunately, there was a little glitch where we had to get more paperwork to say I'm the same person.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also there's a section where you have to open a French bank account now because they want you to be, invested, I guess, and know that there's monies in France to pay for things. And you're not a citizen, but you're a resident. So there's like a lot of paperwork about that too. So as you know, there's a lot of things you have to think about and do along the way. Yeah. We've never signed so many papers in our lives.
No. And also that whole process of, in America, you go to an open house and you do an offer, and if they accept the offer, you could close in a week if you wanted to, if the house was empty and they could get out. None of that happens. But the part, and it gets back to the flowers and it gets back to the shop. It's very interesting. That's the one cultural, and I think you would probably agree with me on this. I was having this conversation with a woman who is a clothing designer who's French, who has done a lot of work in the United States as well as China. And she said, Americans are big picture. They're at the top of the chart. Where are we going with this? They're visionary, very positive, very optimistic. And she said the French, and she's a French woman, so I think she could say this, are into the details, which not only make the beautiful architecture and the beautiful flowers that you love and the beautiful china that you see, but they're also into the details of, even if you want to rent an apartment, or you want to buy an apartment, or you want to open a bank account, or you want to, get electricity or whatever. And in those details are, there's a process. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And you were talking about how when you come to France and you go into a flower shop, they will spend forever, putting the twine around the bouquet. First they'll ask you if it's for you or for someone else. It's a gift. And then the brown paper, and then another ribbon on the outside of the brown paper and all that. It's a process. Everything's a process. So as Americans, it's something to think about, though. As an American, especially if you love France and you travel to France, is to realize that process is as important to them as speed is in America.
Right.
No French grandmother would say to her granddaughter, just plug your nose and jump, honey. No. That would never, ever happen.
Yeah. Well, that's why I tell a lot of the ladies who come on our tour, you have to really remember that it's a slower pace. Dinner's going to take a lot longer than it does in the States. So, I think some people really enjoy that the fast pace of our lives here in the States. Maybe when you go to France, I like it a lot, actually, that things you get to linger, that you don't have to rush between meeting. I mean, I'm sure you could do that in your day if you wanted to, but it's just not as generally not accepted, but it's just not the norm.
No. And the fact that you come back and your staff says you're different, every time you come back from France, it's sort of like maybe that's our cultural share, is that they slow us down a little bit, bring us into the details a little bit, and we're a little bit more of the plug your nose and jump kind of thing, because they need that on the other side. So it's, I love that it's really learning to appreciate culture. And you don't get that when you just stay in a hotel. You have to be around. You have to let yourself be open to the differences, which is really
I'm actually writing a book right now with Rizzoli Publishing.
Oh my goodness. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm so excited that during COVID, it's kind of a cute story. So I had a really sweet, dear friend, a photographer named Kendra Kleineff, and she's photographed for like 12 books. And I was going to France one time and she said, do you mind if I tag along? And I said, oh my gosh, of course, come with me. We went to Sharon's house. We shot there. We shot all over Paris. And finally she looked up at me and she's like, you should do a book about this. I think people would really think this is cool. And I was like, what? Little old me? What am I going to talk about? And she's like, everything actually we just spoke about. And I thought, really, you think people are going to like that? And she's like, no, I think they will. And she's like, we'll take pretty pictures of flower shops. We'll do this, we'll do that. So I thought, so she's like, you should write a book proposal. And I thought, okay, what's that? So during COVID, I Googled how to write a book proposal.
Oh my gosh, this is so
I wrote a book proposal, 60 pages. And it was just so cute because I sent it to a friend who's a writer. And I just said, I don't know what I'm doing here. You know, is this kind of, again, always girlfriends, right? They'll always have your back. And she said, okay, so this is a hot mess. We're going to organize it. And I thought, all right. So we organized it. And we actually were told by so many folks, and especially Kendra, since she did 12 books, she's like, we need an agent because like the agent really knows what was the best publishing house. And I said, well, how do you get an agent? Like, and she's like, I kind of know this one. And I said, all right, I'll email her. And I just emailed her again. What is there to lose? So I emailed her. She got right back to me. She's like, well, it's COVID. Nothing's going on. And I said, well, I wrote this proposal. She looked it over. She loved the concept. She's like, let's do a Zoom call. We did a Zoom call. And next thing you know, she put it to a bunch of publishing houses and she came back and she's like, this is the strongest offer. I really think this is a good publishing house for you. And I thought, is this really happening? Like, this is just a little story about me wandering into flower shops when I was 19 and bringing it back to the States and the whole concept of French versus American way of conducting business, etc. And then there's recipes sprinkled in and a lot of gorgeous pictures of Paris. And literally, you know, we got the deal and I was like, whoa. So it was a process. I'm not going to say it happened overnight. And it's been one of the hardest things I've ever done because it's just a lot of things that are unknown to me. I've never written a book before. I never understand the back end of it. So I'm learning. Unfortunately, my dear friend Kendra passed away in February unexpectedly. And that's
grief.
It's broken my heart. And I cried for probably a week straight and thought, well, this is it. I'm never going to be able to finish this book without her. And, and again, so many people showed up for me and I can't even tell you what the last couple of months have been like with heartbreak and heartache on my heart, but also the fact that this is going to be a dedication to her. And both our love of France. So this book even has more meaning. I'm not going to cry, but it just has more meaning to me. And I'm just so honored and blessed. And I think people would really enjoy this story. And it comes out next year. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. People. Yes. You obviously don't have a title yet, but we have to stay in contact so that we can do a check-in when the book comes out.
I love that.
And then everyone can hear about the book and buy it. So what a beautiful story. What a truly beautiful story. But over and over, you take challenges, Sandra, really, truly, and figure out how to turn them into something positive. It's really you're a very, very impressive woman. You really are.
Thank you.
I'm honored that you've shared it. Really,
I'm honored. Thank you.
Very, very cool. Anything else you want to share before we close today? You know, one of the things that comes to mind for me is, what do you love besides flowers?
Oh, you know what? I'll tell you a cute story. My husband says to me, Sandra, you're the only person I know that can go into Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks and come out with 5 new friends.
You love people.
I do. I just do. I love creating for people. I love planning events with people. I love when people come to my store. Yes. And it's so funny because he's right. I do. I most of the time come out with 5 new friends. Yes. Yeah. But that's that. And I always see the best in people. You can always see the worst, but I always really try to see the best in people. And it's important. It's really important to look at things, a certain way. And I don't know. I just woke up one day and I was, you can be around the negative Nellies, I call them. And I just chose not to take that route. I just Anybody can. It's probably your default, like, you know, when you are faced with, you know, things that are maybe a little diversity. And I don't know, I just always said, you know, there's two ways of looking at things. And I really always take the positive route. And I always see the best in people.
Well, and that has played out throughout your entire life. It's wonderful. So are one of your children, is one of your children going to take over Les Fleurs, or are your kids?
Well, unfortunately, no, yes, no, I have boys and they're, you know, hockey players and sports and yeah, so yeah.
So yeah. So you'll have to work that all out because now you're an author. You're a Parisian and you're an author. So there's all these layers to you, just like a really good French pastry. You know, it's like, what's going to do with all this?
Yes.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. And
thank you so much.
People are going to love this conversation because you've shared so much of yourself and also advice for other women. So thank you.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, au revoir.